All right. Hello and welcome to this episode where we're going to talk about the question, how can I be sure these are just intrusive thoughts, or how do I know these are quote unquote intrusive thoughts? And, this is continuing our series, right, on intrusive thoughts. So if you haven't gone through the first couple episodes of this series, please do that before, because it will just make more sense because we're building on everything. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Matt Cotty. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and the founder of restoredminds.com. And I'm also the creator of the AAA Response. And if you would be so kind to help our show out, we would really appreciate if you like, subscribe, and leave a comment or review on iTunes or Spotify, as it helps the algorithm, helps us get this to more people. So let's go ahead and dive into the question. So I wanted to make an episode on this question because I get it all the time, and it's it's a very just common question. So I thought I'd just speak into it. So the question of how do I know these are intrusive thoughts, or how can I be sure these are just intrusive thoughts? So the implication of this question is basically the person wants certainty that these are just intrusive thoughts and they don't need to do anything about them. And this is always the same thing with intrusive thoughts, right? It's our ability to detach and notice them as something that we're experiencing and not give them any energy or attention or credit. And the paradox is the more we give it energy, the more we judge it, the more we analyze it, the more we try to figure it out. Paradoxically, we the more energy we give to it, the more those thoughts tend to pop up, the more emotion that we experience with them, and then the more judgment we cast upon them, and then the more behaviors we do, and we end up in this loop where we're just experiencing intrusive thoughts on an ongoing basis. And it can lead to a very limiting experience in life. Not to mention the secondary effects of things like feeling depressed, hopeless, and all of that. So this is really just another question that the fear throws on, right? So a lot of times people will say, okay, hey, I'm having these intrusive thoughts, and then all of a sudden they learn about OCD and anxiety, and they understand that intrusive thoughts are genuinely part of being in this experience of fear. And when you're in this energy of fear, your mind tends to produce these intrusive thoughts. These intrusive thoughts tend to be the same, cross category, cross culturally, cross language. It's really a fascinating phenomenon. I mean, having had the opportunity to work with the many people I've had the opportunity to work with in different parts of the world, one of the things that is so fascinating to me is how the same intrusive thoughts tend to manifest for people all over the world, and even in different languages. I mean, that's such an interesting phenomenon to me. So coming back to the question of how do I know it's an intrusive thought? Well, generally that question follows once you learn about intrusive thoughts, and then you tend to learn about, or people offering guidance or advice on what to do with intrusive thoughts, like, again, not get in the conversation, feel the underlying emotion, and all of that. Then the doubt that comes in usually after that is, well, what if these aren't really just intrusive thoughts? What if because I'm not taking them seriously, that makes them happen? And there's so many variations of this one question that kind of come up. I'm trying to state them as many as I can, because a lot of times if I don't say the exact phrasing of the question, the doubt comes in of like, well, what if this question is really not, my question? So really understanding that what we're talking about here is the doubt that whether or not this is an intrusive thought, and how do I know this is just an intrusive thought? So what do I need to do with it? And the answer is still the same. It's you don't engage with it, right? You observe it from a state of consciousness, realizing you are consciousness, not the mind, the diffusion of that, and then not engaging it, not giving it energy, not analyzing it, not ruminating, and then ideally feeling the underlying energy or emotion. Now, how do we know something's an intrusive thought? So when someone comes to me, right, for instance, and is telling me they're experiencing intrusive thoughts, like what's my assessment process where I'm seeing, okay, is this person experiencing intrusive thoughts, or is this person, truly a threat to someone else, themselves, something going on, with their sexuality, right? How do we actually make the assessment? And the answer is pretty simple. I mean, it's just based off the energy state that they're in, right? So for instance, someone who, is having intrusive thought, like sexual intrusive thoughts, right? It's very different than someone who, let's say, is, closeted with their sexuality, right? It's a very, very different energetic experience, because the person who's having, these sexual intrusive thoughts of like, oh, what if this, what if this, what if this, what if this? I mean, number one, like the intrusive thoughts are genuinely repulsive. They identify the thoughts as intrusive, right? And they feel the state that they're in is a feeling of fear, right? Like, it's just, you can honestly just look at the person and you can usually gather what kind of state they're in. And what energy and emotional experience they're having. So the state and the energy is really that's how we know that it's a quote unquote fear and anxiety situation, because that's the energy that the person's in. Someone who's actually, let's say, closeted and is having, is actually, let's say, homosexual, and they're wanting to come out of the closet. That's a very different experience, because the energy that's associated with the sexual thoughts they're having is not one of like, it's not a repelling experience. It's a pleasurable experience, right? Now, fear about coming out of the closet is a different thing, but I mean the actual thoughts they're having don't create this energy for them, right? So there's a clear separation. Same thing with someone who's, let's say, having harmful, intrusive thoughts versus someone who's actually like homicidal, right? And actually wants to like hurt people. It's like the thought of hurting the person they want to hurt is not disturbing to that person. It's like that's the like that is the problem, right? Is they actually are so filled with the state of like anger and rage that in the state where the person's like actually like they don't identify the thoughts as intrusive. I mean, that's like the main point. Like even the idea that the person identifies the thoughts as intrusive is an indication of the energy state of fear, right? Like that's, so I hope I'm articulating this correctly, because it's like, when you're talking about how do you know the thoughts are intrusive, it's like, well, you're the one that believes them to be intrusive in the first place, right? You're the one that believes them not to be a reflection of something that you want or something that you desire, or, where, and so it really comes back down to the energetic state of the individual, like the emotional state, and the perception of the experience itself. So, but even then, this is a trap question oftentimes, because when someone's like, hey, how do I know these thoughts are intrusive thoughts, is just a rumination attempt from the mind to get you to keep thinking about the thoughts themselves. So you want to be careful on this question, because it's just kind of a trap for the most part. And if you've been assessed by someone and you're, having what is prototypical intrusive thoughts in the same categories as people with OCD and anxiety, then part of the recovery process is acceptance that that is actually what's going on. Your doubting of that is you perpetuating the issue, right? You're like, yeah, but I need to be 100% sure. That is the perpetuation of the issue, right? That is you doubting, that is you not trusting, that is you not accepting, and that is you just going down the rabbit hole. That's exactly what happens. And you can spend the next 50 years of your life, if you want, trying to confirm that these are actually quote unquote intrusive thoughts. And that's, that ultimately is a path you can decide to take. And this is why, with things like OCD, anxiety, intrusive thoughts, your willingness to trust people on your journey to recovery, to trust guidance of others, is so paramount to your success, because the reality is if you could think your way there, you would have by now. If you could think your way out of this, you would have. If you could think your way to recovery, you would have. The more time you're spending thinking and analyzing, trying to figure out these thoughts, trying to figure this out on an intellectual level, the longer you're going to waste the time you have on this earth in an attempt to solve something that just doesn't have an answer. There is no one that's going to come to the, to you and say, hey, I know for 100% fact that these are quote unquote intrusive thoughts. And that when they say that, you're going to totally buy it and resolve the issue once and for all. Because the moment someone says that to you, your mind's going to come up with that, yeah, but what if that person's wrong? What if they don't know? What if they didn't know this thought? And it just goes repetitively. So, I wanted to make this specific video because it's a trick question, right? The reality is you're never going to know for certain that they're just quote unquote just intrusive thoughts. Because no matter how much reassurance you get on that, there's always going to be the yeah, but what if that comes in behind it. What you need to do is ultimately, once you get assessed by someone and they're they understand this, they've worked with people with this, and they're able to tell you, oh yeah, this is what's going on, this is what you need to do, then it's a matter of letting go of all these questions and really trusting that guidance. Because if you keep chasing the answers, that's the trap that you're falling into. So even this confirmation of how do I know these are actually just intrusive thoughts, or how do I know I don't need to do anything about these intrusive thoughts, whatever manifestation of that question pops up for you, the pursuit of that question is a trap. The simplest answer is just the energy state. People who are having truly homicidal thoughts don't perceive them as intrusive. People that are having sexual intrusive thought, or sexual thoughts that cause them desire, they don't perceive the thoughts as intrusive. You know what I mean? It's a completely different energy state. These are totally different energies than fear, right? The intrusive thoughts, even the appraisal of the fact that you see the thought as intrusive, is an indication of the fact of fear, generally speaking. So that's why we treat it from a fear, OCD, and anxiety based perspective. And that's why that works. Because when you start to try to analyze the thoughts, or, people go into psychoanalysis, or, all these other different modalities, it's not effective, because the thought isn't the problem itself. It's the underlying energy of fear that we're really looking to address. So hope this helps. I know this is kind of a little bit of a ramble, a little bit of a rant on this one, but I wanted to talk about this question because it's something that I get a lot, and I wanted to kind of shed some light on some of the common misperceptions, and really be able to dig into this idea of even chasing this question itself is often a trap. So hope this was helpful. And with that, wish you a great day, great week, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Hey there. So if you enjoyed that video, we've linked up a few more videos that we think you'd find helpful as well. And if you have found this helpful, we'd really appreciate your support by liking and subscribing. And if you're looking for help and guidance, please check out restoredminds.com, as we have several options for you to get started. See you guys soon.